All right, and we are live. What is going on, my specialist? SPC and King's Comics back here for another edition of the Talkalorian Live. I almost said the Midwest Canteen podcast.
You're good, man. You're good.
It has been an extremely exhausting 2 days, so I'm kind of like 20% here right now. So
Completely understand. We are with our we are with our guest today, Nerd D Leon, my main man Brandon, and he's had a busy weekend too. So I think he feels you, Austin.
Just got back from a retreat.
Oh, nice.
Thanks for having me on.
Oh yeah, man.
Dude,
so guys, so yeah, if for any of you guys who are here, if you guys missed out on the Star Wars Celebration podcast, Brandon now has himself a YouTube channel. Let me find it here quick.
And we will post that in the comments.
Yeah.
But that being said, please give him a like and a follow. Give him some love, and he's got a lot more content coming out soon.
Yes. Just some shorts daily. So just Star Wars and anime every other day, and then some conventions I'll be going to, some vlogs, and as well as some collectible openings. Thank you, Austin, for that. And then some collectible openings. So look for that coming soon. I appreciate you guys having me on. It's always a pleasure. I'm so excited for this show.
Thanks, straight. And this episode, man, guys, I think we had a lot happen. This is kind of like what I've been looking forward to all season. It was like everything kind of coming together finally. And I don't know how y'all feel, but I feel like we've finally seen a payoff. We've finally seen what all these episodes have been leading up to.
Yeah, I mean, it took quite a number of weeks for us to get there, but and again, like while this season of The Mandalorian hasn't been overly exciting, but not overly bad personally.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely was happy with this episode.
Yes.
I'm going to make an extremely bold statement here.
Oh boy, here we go.
Oh.
I think next to the premiere of the whole series, so the pilot episode.
Wow.
This might be literally the best episode of The Mandalorian.
Wow.
Dude.
That's a bold statement.
I know. I definitely enjoyed this episode a lot. A lot to unfold, a lot to take in at one time.
Yeah.
Like, woofda.
I think I agree with you there. I didn't want to say it too early on, but I think this is definitely so far my favorite episode of the season. I know. Once again, like the way for those listening and the way we run this show is we start with a mild no spoilers, and then we kind of gradually discuss more and more spoilers as the episode progresses. So I'm just going to start by saying, Austin, I'm with you. I think this was the best episode of the season. Brandon, talk to us. What are you thinking?
This one was a little hard for me. I'll be honest. I think overall, there was a lot to take in. Obviously, we'll get to the ending.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, I think there's some questions I had, of like, where is this going? And then some confirmations that we got of like, all right, we're getting there, And so it wasn't the best for me. I still think, getting, recapturing Navarro was one of the best ones.
Yes.
But yeah, so, but yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, 100% agree. I do still think that anytime we've gotten to see like just a fleet of or a flock of Mandalorians dropship, that always just makes for an awesome scene. I mean, in the capturing of Navarro and in this episode, there's something just like awesome about seeing the Mandalorians like mount up together.
Yeah, I definitely. I mean, man, just literally from like the moment this episode started, like I literally don't even think I closed my mouth at all. Like, I literally think I was just like the whole time, especially like the opening. Like the opening to me was tied for probably my favorite part of this whole episode.
Yeah, I think I'll also mention one. This is non-spoiler territory, but I love the scoring. I love the soundtrack for this episode. You know, it felt like it was remixing and like really including different variations on the Mandalorian theme song, right? So I liked how intense it was. Like they really, just musically. I know that's dumb, but musically, I like this episode too from a soundtrack perspective.
Yeah, I guess it's just good to me, man. Just hearing like the Mando theme song in this episode, like not hearing it much except in the opening. Even like I don't know if I want to use the word remix to it, but like a different variation of it at the beginning of each episode. It's good just to hear that awesome classic Mandalorian theme from Ludwig.
Well, and especially when it's like set against like all the action, like set behind all the action going on, because there was a lot this episode. I think this is the most intense episode we've had as far as action goes. But maybe that's just me. I don't know. So, what do we feel about? I don't want to say this is mild spoiler territory, right? But what do we feel about how this plays into? Risky question to ask. How do we feel about this potentially playing into the sequel trilogy?
I mean, I see it kind of leading towards that because, like, the vibe I got from looking at our newer villains is all I will say to start off spoiler free. I definitely see them heading towards that direction. A cameo we had in this episode.
Yes.
Very minor cameo, but still there. Definitely leaning more towards the sequels, but I've said it from the start of this. Now that we're leading us closer to the timeline of when the sequels are, I think John and Dave can probably fill in the gaps of where we need to know about the First Order coming up.
I agree. I think this goes back to something we were talking about in previous weeks, right? About how are the Dave Filoni shows or how are the upcoming shows going to play into the new trilogy, right? Or if they're even going to. And that's after all of the sequel announcements and not sequel, but celebrations announcements, right? Especially with the new Daisy Ridley or Rey, the new Rey movie coming out that's supposed to be set 15 years after the sequel trilogy.
I'm in a rare camp. I'm actually excited for this movie.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Brandon, how do you feel about Andy's question about them possibly leading us into the sequels?
Into the 7, 8, 9.
Yes.
Yes. I'm not so thrilled, to be honest. I was, with. Are we getting into spoiler territory yet?
We'll say let's start with maybe
minor
spoiler.
Spoilers.
Yeah,
minor spoilers. So with obviously Hux, coming out Hux, obviously relative of the Hux in the New Order, that being confirmed, right? And I would say sorry, what is that word? Project Necromancer. Obviously that being confirmed. I was kind of hoping, not a big fan with obviously 7 was good, but 8 and 9 was hoping that it would just kind of like it's kind of our stain on Star Wars. I'm hoping that was the whole point. But we'll see. I'm not super thrilled, but again, I'll give it a try. Hopefully, it helps it out. But I will see. So
Yeah, 100%. I think that this ties back into arguments that I've made in previous weeks where it feels like there's a lot of weight in the Mandalorian series now, right? Like if they are potentially using this to lead into the creation of the First Order and like have that backstory, then it just shows how much like the Mandalorian's kind of carrying the weight of the franchise. And I think that's something that we'll probably see continue with the new movies coming out, and especially the Ahsoka series.
Yeah, I feel like I have hope that Filoni and Favreau can maybe make the sequels a little bit more tolerable for some people. Again, I know for a lot of people, as a whole, it doesn't really work. I still have the unpopular opinion. I put it above the prequels as a whole.
Mhm.
I do like the prequels. I feel I like them movies individually more than I like all the prequels individually. But the thing I think that like shows like Clone Wars and Rebels, like how they filled in some of the gaps in their respective trilogies. Not specifically to say Mandalorian is, like a sequel trilogy, show or whatever, but
Yeah,
I feel like they'll have things make a little bit more sense. I mean, especially with episode 9, because obviously, the beginning of episode 9, everybody's concerned about, the whole cloning situation, we'll say.
Yeah. Both have pros and cons. I regardless of how I felt with, the Jar Jar and some of the acting and the prequels, I think they really, even though a lot of people are not a big fan of like cartoons,
yeah,
I think Clone Wars and Rebels really bolstered, and also Bad Batch, really bolstered the prequels and kind of added some weight to it. It's like when you start pretty much every show or movie or has a scene from Order 66,
right.
it's like watching younglings getting killed. Like has some weight,
Yeah.
has a lot of weight to it. So it's like even Obi-Wan, that's another one, that added some weight to the prequels. So
Well,
yeah.
and that's actually an interesting point that Brandon, you and Austin have both brought up, right? Is how shows like the Clone Wars and Rebels and Bad Batch have acted like supporting series to the prequel series, prequel trilogy. But I think the Mandalorian kind of started off like that, where it was supposed to be kind of this interlude series, like, oh, it takes place after the sequel. I mean, the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy, and
In 5 years.
Yeah, it's 5
years after Return of the Jedi. So
yes.
Yeah, it'd be 5 ABY. That sounds right.
So I think like the whole point of the series then has always been to act as like a kind of window into, well, what's this character doing in the time between the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy, right? But now it's kind of like, oh, they're kind of starting to now use it to like lead into the sequel trilogy rather than just show what's happening before that and after Return of the Jedi. So I think we've seen a kind of a transition in where this series, like what this series is kind of supporting now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we can get into some more spoilers because, again, there's a lot to talk about with this episode.
Yeah, and to be fair, now that we're literally at the penultimate episode, the next to last episode, right, it's kind of hard to not talk about spoilers.
Yeah.
Austin, you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure.
Oh,
I'll
gosh.
do my best. So the beginning of this episode, we get our least favorite person working at the New Republic.
Elia Kane, yeah.
Yeah, Elia Kane. I always forget her name because I just don't like her, so I don't remember about her very much.
What's funny is that every conversation I've had, for whatever reason, I remember her name and no one else has. And it's wild because I can't even remember the name of the covert. Like each episode, I've forgotten the name of the covert. And then I think she stuck with me because she's just so slimy. Like something's going on. And this episode kind of solidifies that and like reveals what we're looking at now.
Fair enough. Yeah, we meet up with her. We see her walking around what I'm assuming is the underworld of Coruscant.
Mm-hmm.
And we see her talking to this big Viper droid, and we get the hologram of what we have been waiting for all season.
Yes, sir.
The return of Moff Gideon, and this guy could not, and I mean could not, have come back in a bigger way.
Dude, this was such a way to introduce him, not just in like right from the basis. Like no, they weren't even like really baiting us this entire season, right? Like yeah, there were some teasers, and yeah, he got broken out, but no, it's like this is the first time that we've had an active interaction with him, and not just like his hologram, not just him like coming into the episode for a moment. It's like no, this was very much a Moff Gideon episode. I mean, and beautifully so.
Yeah, and one thing I think in that conversation, I think that when she was talking about our pirates, the pirates are they're done in Navarro. One thing, and I don't know if you caught this, Moff Gideon said, "Which Mandalorians?" So he said, he was like, "Which ones are you talking about?" And so I don't know if that'll play in my later theory that we'll talk about later, but that's something something to think about. Like, which ones are you talking about? Because he seems pretty knowledgeable on, and even when she eventually said Bo-Katan, Bo-Katan led the attack on the pirate ship. He was like confused because it was like, oh, but they're both enemies. So they're sworn enemies.
So here's the interesting part: is there's been a lot of, considering this episode is called The Spies. I like that each of these episodes, like with their title, they always have double meanings, right? Like there's always multiple angles to their names, like the convert or whatever, right? Like when we had Elia Kane and Dr. Pershing, we had them and this kind of conversion that they had, as well as that Bo-Katan had in that episode. Like these names and titles always have meaning. So when we talk about the Spies, when we get into it later, there's this theory for who the other spy is, and I kind of have some thoughts on that. But right now, please continue. I'm rambling, dude. I've got my tinfoil hat on.
No, but I will say, with Moff Gideon coming up, it's going to be interesting to see if he continues, or I mean, if he's, I'm ready for Giancarlo Esposito. Him being the big bad, I'm good with that. Like, I know that's something that we've all thought that's going to be the case, but he just adds a lot of ruthlessness in a villain that I appreciate. In other roles he's played, but like Moff Gideon, he's always had a special thing for Mandalore, and I'm ready for it. So,
well, and I don't know if you all agree, but I think that is not to bash the sequel trilogy again, episodes 7, 8, and 9. But I think that is one thing that the sequel trilogy lacked, is they didn't have a congruent, like contiguous villain. So like the original trilogy, right? The original trilogy, there were, the villain was clearly the Sith, right? The villain was clearly the Sith, Darth Sidious, and Darth Vader. Then in the prequel trilogy, it's clear the Sith were moving in the background, and that there wasn't kind of a formal villain, so to speak. It wasn't really Palpatine until the end when you see everything come together. But it was still kind of clear that's what they were leading up to. And in this new trilogy, they kind of couldn't decide what the villain was because things like snap back and forth. Like, oh, Snoke's not the villain. Kylo Ren is. Oh, Snoke was the villain. Nope, it's Palpatine. It changes back and forth. But
Yeah.
I like Moff Gideon because this is like a contiguous villain, right? It's
Yeah.
like having Thrawn in Rebels, where it's it's all together. It's like having Maul in Clone Wars, where their presence is felt. And I like that we have a villain that we're getting to see develop throughout the course of the entire series, not just a one-off.
Yeah.
I also have my little theory, but we'll get to that towards the end as well. Because I feel like mine might be possible. Don't know if it'll actually happen, but I don't know. We'll get to that. But man, I obviously after the call with that he had with Alaya, him walking through all of them,
the cloning tanks and.
Yeah, the cloning tanks and I'm trying to think of what they are. The shield, like the ray shields or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Him walking through and there being what I literally thought were just a new variation of stormtroopers. So I was like, oh, that's sick.
Dude, speaking of which, one of my theories got confirmed in this episode, and I'm so freaking happy about it.
Yeah.
We'll go into that later, but please continue.
Okay. But, just that walk, man, it all just felt like literally that whole sequence of him just walking through there with all them troopers. That is the definition of the Empire there. Because I got such shades of Darth Vader just walking with all the stormtroopers just sitting there in Return of the Jedi, like him walking down off of the ship, everybody just waiting for them. This was just the straight definition. And whether it's a callback or not, whether it's just, my nerdy mind making up my own things. But yeah, I got just such vibes of just evil Empire Vader. Like this is what a villain should be in Star Wars.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, I think especially because with kind of the Sith mentality of like emotionality and things like that, him going to the Shadow Council and there being kind of this slight animosity there was also such an interesting dynamic because we got a huge name drop, right? Like this is the second time. Wait, because we haven't had Thrawn brought up this entire season, have we? This is the first time we had Thrawn brought up this season, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
there was like hints maybe of possibly like this can't be just a warlord, but no exact specific name drop.
But I think with the TIE fighters that bombed Bo-Katan's like hold or fortress, right? I think this kind of confirms for the most part that this is, or that it was the work of Moff Gideon.
Right. And that's the thing too. And I can definitely hear that. Oh, so one thing, those new stormtroopers are called Imperial Commandos.
Okay.
And then they're from Rebels. Rebels had them.
Really? Okay.
And then one thing too that I would say is that you can kind of hear his animosity, and it's like, so I can't remember his name is I might butcher his name, but it's Pelion. Pelion. So he's the right hand to Thrawn.
Okay.
So he's his right hand. So basically, he's like, okay, this is we've called the Shadow Council.
Mm-hmm.
He's still not here. Where is he? And then when he was like, you know what? It's time for new leadership. I'm here to take the mantle. So, and I think when they said that, they were like, I don't know. But they were, as soon as he said Mandalorian's about to take Mandalore, everyone was like, well, that's going to mess everything up. So, and that's when everyone's like, you need resources, you got it.
Yep.
So, we'll see. I'm ready for it. There's going to be a big culminating battle. So
I love how there's this sense of PTSD that the Mandalorians cause anytime they're like brought up. like oh no, we like they he was asking just for 3 Praetorian guards and he got them as soon as he name dropped. So
Yeah.
I just love how much of a threat Mandalorians feel like throughout this series.
And I'm curious too, like, where is this big force? Like, supposedly there's a military somewhere that we're not aware of. And so it's like, maybe it's, episode 9, they're going to be like, we've had all these battleships ready for Thrawn.
Well, I feel like that is, to your point, what's happening, because they're talking about Thrawn moving in secret, and then the Shadow Council also references that they've got kind of sleeper units, or they've got Imperial presence on like every known planet, or like every Republic planet. So there's that.
Oh, geez, my headset's stuck on me. Sorry.
Austin, you're good.
Also, oh, go ahead, Austin.
I am just like so not here right now. I don't know what is going on with me.
One thing I would say about the Shadow Council, man, Commandant Hux.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he wasn't one of my favorite characters in the sequels, right? Because he was just kind of like a silly kind of bad guy, like his over-the-top speech, and in Force Awakens, it was like, man, like, but like he just reminded me so much of that character. It was just like really like how he was talking. It was like, well, I forget what he says, but it was just like, I don't know, his voice is just like, man, I could see a lot, from your character in Force Awakens. So, or your child or children, grandchildren. So,
I don't know if you guys kind of got the vibe, but I know it's low. Okay, sorry. That whole scene with them all in the circle, like them all talking, I got a lot of vibes of Andor, like when all the Imperials are all in like that room when they're all like trying to come up with all the idea, like, oh, who's this Cassian Andor and all of that stuff. Like that's what that reminded me of. But before we get into talking about that a little bit, with that Pelion drop in here, he's now the second person from a specific book who is now here in the new canon.
Yep.
I will be totally honest, dude. I am 100% convinced. Could be wrong. Obviously, we'll find out in a number of years. But
all right, I'm
extremely convinced that Dave Filoni's film is going to be Heir to the Empire.
Oh,
I'm very convinced.
Like an adaptation, like a.
Yeah, I would assume probably like a newer, like obviously like an updated Disney version, obviously to make specifics about it canon. So that just a theory right there.
I would say yeah, because I mean that was the most popular series in Star Wars novels. It was the Thrawn series, and Heir to Empire I think was it the first or second of that trilogy?
It was the first. It's Heir to the Empire, and then Dark Force Rising, and then The Last Command. So these are the other two. I'm in the midst of reading the Heir to the Empire. I'm not very far in it.
Yeah.
So, fortunately, that's all I can comment. I think I got like 20 pages into it.
Yeah, that's all good. I'm excited either way. I do think with Dave Filoni being pretty much, I would say the the child, he has George Lucas in mind at all times. So I think maybe that's something that he always keeps in mind. And Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are always people that look at nostalgia. They always like to pick random things from old Star Wars lore and just put it in. and I think that's something that we could see in that new movie with Dave Filoni. So
Okay. I think that's kind of interesting because now that you mention it, I don't know why I just thought of this. I feel like I'm kind of having vibes of like this, like the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian had a lot of influence from the OG trilogy, and in this season we've got a lot of influence from the prequel trilogy, and now kind of, I guess, the sequel trilogy, because we're getting to see like a lot more of the politicking in this series, kind of like the kind of like the prequel trilogy, and now we're getting to see some allusions made to episodes 7, 8, and 9. So I don't know, man. That I feel like that's just starting to become all the more present in this series.
yeah, I agree.
You know, what were you gonna say, Austin? I'm so sorry.
I don't really know. I didn't. I unfortunately missed your guys' whole conversation. I had to go get a new headset because
You are good, man. You are good.
I'm having a rough day with this. Normally, I'm not this unprepared, this like scatterbrain, but
you're good. I guarantee you.
All I will say, and if you are watching, I blame children for this one.
So, I guess what's interesting as well, how do we fit? Actually, this is such a dumb observation. I love that when they show the Imperial cruiser, right? Like the Imperial cruiser, we see the mythosaur painted on the bottom of it. Like,
that's cool.
Okay, I think it's cool. I do think it's cool. But as an aside, how much effort and cost would it take to paint that thing on the bottom of a ship that size? Like, I think that. So that has no bearing. It's science fiction, I know, but I just thought that was funny.
All I can say, man, is if Sabine was around for this, that ship would look a lot differently.
Yeah, it would be very colorful and artistic, which I appreciate it. So
yes.
I'm all about that. So I would love to see a TIE fighter and like graffiti art. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
And like in live action, that'd be really cool.
Well, we might get to see that in Ahsoka for all we know. So.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see the Phantom 2 again, because again, I just got done with season 3 of Rebels here a few days ago, and I saw that Sabine painted it up, and so I'm excited to see that thing in live action.
So I'm curious. I guess we can kind of fast forward because we had, for the most part, all we had was like the intro with Moff Gideon. Then we had the Mandalorian meetup, and there's clearly some tensions there. But then we fast forward a little bit to this plan. And I think this is where people start to get a little suspicious of if there is a spy in the Mandalorian midst, right? Where this plan comes together to split up, have like the majority of the Mandalorian fleet hovering over Mandalore, and then have like a rescue party go down alongside the Armorer, Bo-Katan, and Din. Oh, actually, Austin, you know what I meant to bring up? You were right. Grogu got his little exosuit.
Dude, that was so sick and so adorable. I love that scene. Oh my god.
Dude, I think you said that episode 1. You said that in the first episode. You said, I think he's gonna like get a little exosuit made out of IG-11.
I mean, they just did the first episode with IG-11, and then they just like left, and then they like never talked about it again. And then now, obviously, he is back to a degree, I guess, which I like what they did with him because it makes sense. Because in season 1, he did protect Grogu in the last episode of the first season, so.
Interesting.
I think to a degree, it's a nice little callback, a nice little tribute to IG-11, now IG-12, getting his memory bank completely wiped, and now he just starts from scratch. And yeah, the fact that basically the only way he can work now is to be piloted, and so in a weird way, this it's a dumb comparison. So Andy, I apologize.
Oh boy, let's go.
It's almost like Grogu is working a smaller version of a Gundam.
No, that's not a dumb comparison. I love that. That is a valid comparison.
It was sounding good in my head, and I'm like, oh boy, that kind of sounds a little dumb now the way I'm saying it. But yeah, and the fact too that Grogu has a way to communicate because obviously throughout the
Yeah.
show he's just still making his baby noises, like
Mhm.
when Bo and Din are saying this is the way, and he's just back there making those noises. Now he's just yes, 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 yes,
Well,
yes.
so and that's like something that was interesting to me is it kind of shows his character progression in a way, right? Like if we're treating Din and Grogu as kind of this like awkward, like this weird family unit, right? Like father and son sort of relationship, is almost like we're seeing Grogu grow up in a sense where he has a little bit more of his autonomy now. Because in having this suit, it's like he actually has a way to kind of like walk alongside Mando to like communicate at least a little bit. So I thought that was kind of interesting because to me it felt like there was kind of maybe a metaphoric or symbolic layer to him growing up a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and another reason why, like my statement at the beginning when I said that this might be the best episode of The Mandalorian, I mean, this has a perfect blend of like action,
Yes.
drama, comedy. Like the comedy in this whole sequence, man, is just perfect for me for Star Wars. Like even just something so subtle, he's like, no, he can't be in that, and he just hops right in there. He's like,
Well,
no, get him out of there. No.
Also, it goes back to what I said, like for the first episode of this season, is like if they make Din too jokey, I'm not gonna like it.
Mm-hmm.
But they played this perfectly in my opinion because he maintains his role as kind of the straight man. He's still looking out for Grogu's interests, and then ultimately has to be like, okay, fine, you can have the robot.
Yeah, I love the little interaction.
Mhm.
What are those? What is that guy called?
Oh gosh, yeah.
I don't know if it's exactly him, but we had one in The Rise of Skywalker. He was
Yes.
called Babu Frick.
Mhm.
He's just so fun. Bad baby.
Bad baby, no squeezing.
I always love it, it's so funny because it's like you on the other hand you get like this kid of Grogu, but then on the other spectrum you get like I'm going to be in this exosuit,
Yep.
like, and I'm going to help you fight. Like it's so interesting. You just see like the baby, and then you see this where it's like there's a big spectrum of emotion and like he used to be in the first season, it used to be like super scared. Like
Yeah.
he was a kid, like he was really timid, didn't want to do much, and then you see this progression of like he's seen like, you know, he's not suppressed his memories anymore.
Yeah.
Having PTSD in the foundry or whatever they're called.
Oh yeah, the forge
with
and
the armor. Yeah, the
Mhm.
forge with the armor. And so it's like it's always interesting to see. It's like that's what I agree, Andy. That's why it's like the character progression with both Din and Grogu has been really cool to see.
Mhm.
So
I will say though, in regards to Din, obviously I'm kind of jumping the gun a little bit here, but I'm a little concerned about Din.
Okay.
And not just, obviously the situation he's in at the end of the episode, but I mean just the character in general, because like
Interesting.
I believe it was Rick Famuyiwa, the guy who directed this episode, ironically enough, and one of the executive producer of the show now. He made a
Yeah.
comment that, the first two seasons when they said the show is called The Mandalorian, obviously the show was about Din Djarin. He said this season is pretty much, it could be about any Mandalorian. So
Yeah, actually.
there's been theories that, the Mandalorian they're talking about now is Grogu. That's been my theory for this whole season thus far. But obviously this season's been a lot more focused on Bo-Katan.
Yes.
And even the Armorer to a degree. Like there's not really been a whole lot of Din Djarin in this season. And obviously that's why I come to see it, because I love Din Djarin. I become so attached to the character. Pedro Pascal is amazing as an actor, so him playing that character makes me want to continue watching his story and see where it's going to go. But
Well, and that was a thought, not during the first season, but during the second season. My thought, once we got introduced to Bo-Katan and Boba Fett, reunited with Boba Fett,
Mhm.
I was talking about how realistically you could spin The Mandalorian as a series into different stories about different Mandalorians. So that's kind of what we're now circling back around to in this season, right? Is whether or not this is truly a Din show, Din Djarin, or whether it's going to actually remain a Din Djarin show. I mean, I hope it does, but I think I like the concept of focusing on the Mandalorian people as a whole
Mhm.
and other Mandalorians, even though I do, to your point, Austin, want to see more Din.
Yep. I would agree with you. I mean, even too, like a couple days ago when we were talking about Tales of the Jedi, how, they could do all these other spin-off shows like Tales of the Sith, Tales of Bounty Hunters. I mean, you could even do a Tales of Mandalorians or The Mandalorians or however you want to word the show. Like, I think it'd be interesting. I don't mind it, but again, I want more Din because again,
Yes.
I've become just so invested. I will even say he's only been around for a couple of years, but just the way he handles himself and the actions he takes and the way he protects Grogu, he is in my top 10 favorite Star Wars characters of all time.
Agreed. So I guess let's kind of like, are we ready to talk about the siege of Mandalore, or reclaiming of Mandalore? Because I wanted to talk about the fact that we've got survivors on Mandalore.
I'm sketched out about that.
Yeah. I guess I'm confused. Is it y'all are more knowledgeable? Is that a thing? Like, has it always been a thing that the Night Owls are still present, or is this new information? Maybe not to other fans, but to y'all at least, because to me this is new.
Well, so has been no evidence of anyone still living on Mandalore. So it seemed kind of suspect that as soon as they landed, they showed up and they knew exactly where to go and where it was a trap. And so that's where it's like, I'm not sure. And, with this being the episode called The Spies, we don't know. I don't know if because there is a point where it's like there was a faction with Bo-Katan and Rebels, and with I want to say there was a faction that was with Darth Maul, and then in the episodes in season 7 of Clone Wars, we see that they fall to Bo-Katan in the at the time the Republic. So and with that, all of a sudden when the Empire took over, obviously with the help of Gar Saxon, that's where he was over the Imperial Commandos, which fought Bo-Katan and the Night Owls. So it's interesting to see what's building. I think they're a little suspect. I just didn't. I think also too, like the armor was too willing to like. I'll take the injured. I won't like it. Like not even like. I'll take him. You guys stay, and I'll take the injured up to the ship to get. And I'm like, but you were like, I want to go too. So I'm like, why all of a sudden are you okay with like we sending one of our best fighters probably back up just to run an errand pretty much?
Well, and this is where I start to have like some serious beef with maybe the majority of like the Mandalorian fan base, is that since we don't know the other spy or spies in this episode, people have been, I guess, saying that there is a potential that it's the armorer, right? That the armorer is the quote unquote spy. And this is ticking me off, guys. Like, y'all know me. I love the armor, and this is going to be some straight up bullcrap. Like, I mean, I'm sorry, but like, I can see it. I can understand where people are coming from, and I can even see it from her perspective of she's making a sacrifice to save the Mandalorian people, right? And I think, Oh, dang it. No, I think I'm starting to connect
No,
some
yeah,
dots
you're
here.
you're talking yourself into it now.
Yeah.
Well, because I think what's interesting is the fact that we also have Bo-Katan's story come up of how she lost the Darksaber. And I think that's also kind of intentional, right? Is it might be kind of alluding to the fact that the armorer or someone else might have made a deal on behalf of the Mandalorian people. Kind of implying that Moff Gideon has like trying to pull the same thing twice. I don't know.
Well, and this is kind of, I will go in. I don't know. We talked to one of our students today, and a lot of who the armor is in question. And I've one of the theories that it could be is Rook Cast from she was the right hand to Gar Saxon, and after season 7 and into Rebels, we never see her again. And one thing that I think it was the Death Watch, or I forget what they were called themselves with Darth Maul as the leader, but they had horns and a red chest plate. And what does the armor have? Horns on her helmet and a red chest plate. So it might be she sold out the Mandalorian people to maybe help out her people.
Right.
We don't know.
Well, and to your point, it feels like part of the problem is that the people who went ahead, right, like the people she left behind were the most combative and like the most like arguably critical Mandalorians. Like she had Paz Vizsla, she had Din Djarin, she had Axe Woves, and she had Bo-Katan. So it's kind of interesting that all of them were the ones who were sent down, almost as if they are trying, like whether it's her or not, I don't know. But it felt like that was a very tactical move to have them all in a group.
Yeah, and I think someone asked, I don't know if it was this episode, are you part of Death Watch? And it looked straight at, I think it was a question to Paz because he's part of the Vizsla clan. And he was asked, are you Death Watch? Because I think Death Watch was the clan that went over and helped out Maul. And so that's something to think about. Like, it's a very convoluted, but like Rook Cast might be one of the armor that we don't know who she is or where she's been the past, forever. And so that's one thing to think about there. So
I just don't think Andy wants to hear theories about his favorite character turning into.
No, I freaking don't. Like honestly, this is upsetting me.
Like
emotional damage.
I mean, they're like you are literally flying, and all of a sudden you turn off your communicator or something. She turns off something.
I thought she was trying to,
but she turned off communication, so she's going somewhere or whatever. But
yeah, but she could have been turning it off because of like feedback, like microphone feedback or like whatever. Like there are magnetic disturbances in the atmosphere of Mandalore because of the glassing. So it's very possible she just didn't want to listen to the feedback, or or like, oh, I can't communicate. I might as well have it off. Like could be very innocent.
Andy, just accept it. She might possibly be the villain.
Keyword is might. So there's a chance that she's not.
Like, but who would be the spy though?
Maybe Paz Vizsla. I don't know.
Well, he's dead. How is that going to work now?
Whoa, spoilers. Mild spoilers, Austin. Dead.
Not mild. That's big spoiler. I'm jumping ahead. But I'm just saying.
Honestly, straight up, dying is one of the best ways to trick people into thinking you're not the villain. You know what I mean? So, hot take. Maybe he gets rezzed, or maybe he didn't die at all. Maybe those 3 Praetorian guards that took him out and stabbed him to death were like faking it.
Oh, yeah, that looked pretty fake.
Getting stabbed through the spine.
I'm running out of excuses.
He's fine. It's just a flesh wound.
Man, can we talk about that? Like how ruthless Moff Gideon is. Like he literally got these guys in a kill chamber. Like it was looking so good whenever they were entering, and then I don't know. I felt dread. I legitimately felt dread when they're like, "Why are other Mandalorians fighting us?"
Down by dread, are you talking about the judge?
No, not
I'm
Carl
s-
Urban, Judge Dredd.
I'm sorry, that was lame. I apologize.
You are good. But no, I felt dread. Like my heart sank as soon as I saw that they might be fighting other Mandalorians. And then they turn out to be Death Troopers, which finally comes back around to my theory that I've been saying since like season 2 that we're gonna get some like Imperial guards with Mandalorian armor.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, I would assume these were the people who came to save Moff Gideon.
Yeah. Well, so that's the interesting part, right? Is now we've got two options. Either A, these are the people who bailed out Moff Gideon, or B, the spy or spies are the one that bailed out Moff Gideon. So there's two like angles to this, but I think you're right. I think it was the Death Troopers that saved him.
Yeah, that could be it. I think overall it's like we don't know. And I think that, obviously every time it all just culminates in the end for Mandalorian. So maybe we'll see when, what happens. Because maybe we don't maybe we're all wrong. Maybe
Yeah.
yeah, maybe, it's like, but can we talk about like Moff Gideon's suit? You can't have it like
Yes.
it gave me like a lot of it was like, man, this looks like an upgraded Darth Vader suit.
Yeah.
And I was just like, because like it still had that, that chest plate, right? And it had the little blinking buttons and everything, all those lights. And I'm like,
Mhm.
man, that looks like Darth Vader. Like as
Well,
other
and
than like the horns, right?
well,
But
that
like,
goes back to y'all's theory about the fact that he, after like kind of reviewing it, like the horns on his helmet were like is it Death Watch or is it like the Darth Maul horns? Like
yeah, well, it's supposed to be kind of representative of the Darth Maul, but yeah.
Yeah,
But like,
when
yeah.
when they revealed that the Empire has been on Mandalore and they're using Mandalore as a base, where they're sending out TIE interceptors, the same TIE interceptors that attacked Bo-Katan's house, attacked
yes,
Bo and Din in, I think it was episode 3, if I remember right. Episode with
yes,
Dr.
yeah,
Pershing. The best part of that whole episode, personally, to me. But
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But dude, like when they went into that little area, like that was my first thought. I'm like, this all looks like new. Like this all
Yeah.
looks like brand new, like surroundings and stuff compared to where they were with the destroyed portions of Mandalore and
Mhm.
everything. And now, like the farther and farther they're getting, is the fact that it's getting almost newer and newer. And then yeah, we get to that section where they're all inside of that little area, which I've actually discovered because it was bothering the hell out of me.
Okay.
One of the Mandalorians that they found was actually one of them, the blonde-haired one, if you can even really tell he's blonde-haired,
Right.
is one of Jesse Pinkman's friends from Breaking Bad.
Wait, what?
Oh,
I can't.
yeah.
I cannot remember what it. Dude, I
Oh,
kept
no,
looking
no.
at him. I'm like,
Badger
Oh.
or
I think it was Badger.
Yeah, I think
That's
that's who it
funny.
was.
Badger or
Yeah.
Skinny Pete or
Well, because
Yeah.
whether you guys are big horror fans, I don't know. Like, I kept looking at him. I'm like, is that Bill Moseley? Because that's who that looked like the whole time.
Interesting.
Like, is that Bill Moseley? There's no way. And then I was scrolling through Instagram the other day, and somebody pointed that out, and they're like, "Oh nope, that's Badger from Breaking Bad." I'm
I
like,
love that. Okay,
so we get
interesting.
Badger and Gus Fring in this show now. That is cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
Dude, that just brings me back to how I think it's nice to see the range that Giancarlo Esposito has even as a villain. He like kind of shows us different facets of being a villain, at least in the 3 roles that I've seen him in. Not counting Far Cry, but in Cyberpunk Edge Runners, in Breaking Bad, and in The Mandalorian, he seems to have like a lot of dynamic change between him being a villain, and I love it. Like here, he's ruthless, he's self-important, he's scheming. It's awesome. but he is also like more emotional than someone like Gus Fring. And then, oh gosh, I want to say Tesla, I forget. But in Cyberpunk, he's a businessman. Like he's out in the open, but he's doing shady deals, things like that, and still like a little bit more emotional, but still calculated, more so than Gus Fring is.
Interesting.
I think Gus Fring and Moff Gideon are kind of the same, right? It's like
Faraday.
he was trying to overthrow the cartel and kind of take it for himself, and he did at some point. He killed all the cartel. Spoiler alert. But like, but like at some point, right? He's like, hey, if Thawne doesn't show up to the Shadow Council, like he's done. Like you keep saying he's here and we're gonna show this big military, but like if we don't do something now, the New Republic is going to band together and defeat us.
And
so it's like
I think that's what's interesting to me, right? Is like it's not like he's acting selfishly. It's like he's almost like wanting to act in the Empire's best interest, just the way that he would do it. So I like that take on someone who's like still very much like got a set of ideals and philosophies, but if someone's not going to do it, he is. Find a need, fill a need, or whatever. See a need, fill a need.
well, yeah, and the one thing too is obviously he's controlling, right? So he's like getting on to Hux and Pelion. They're like, you two keep using all the resources, and none of us see any of the end product. So it's like you guys need to start sharing the love, or we're gonna be coming after you. So it's like, and that's where he's like, I think there needs to be new leadership, because it's like I don't see any of the end product. He's doing his like hit and run things, which is kind of dangerous.
Yep.
And we'll start seeing visibility. So it's like, we need to start seeing something soon, or because everybody hates the New Republic. So I don't know. We'll see. I think he's going to end up meeting his demise, because it's like I think Thrawn is going to be like enough. And just end him. So I think he might do the lead him out and then let him get destroyed and then pull back type of thing. You know what I mean? So
give him enough rope to hang himself, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I can't remember what his name is, but yeah, he did something like that in or God, am I thinking of the right person? He did that in Rebels, didn't he? Or am I thinking of Agent Callus? I think that's who I'm thinking of.
Oh, I think it's Callus, yeah.
Yeah, Callus with that other guy when Ezra and the droids are all like breaking in to try and get Callus out. That's what I'm thinking of. Never mind. I'll shut up now.
No, you're good. So I think to that point, right? Like that means we've had like maybe 3 or 4 references to the sequel trilogy. We've had the Shadow Council and Hux. We had like the cloning chambers that look like they have maybe like miniature Snokes inside of them. And then we had the Praetorian Guards toward the end, right? Like I didn't know they were going to be some prototype version, but it's like, nope, they're in full red armor and with the electro weapons that they used in episode 8.
I actually liked these ones a lot better because like I know a lot of people when it comes to that scene in The Last Jedi, I know a lot of people have their gripes about it because, of the stunt choreography of the scene, how people are just kind of hanging back, waiting for their turn to get in. We're like, all 3 of these guys, man, they do not care. They go right after pause. And they are not, I don't want to use this phrase, but it's all I can come up with right now. But
let's go.
They are not gentle with him. That is for sure. Like they are just straight up. Like one of them is just slowly impaling him with their sword. I don't know why. I got vibes from Freddy versus Jason in the final battle when Jason's slowly getting stabbed with his own machete by Freddy. That's what I thought of right away. But yeah, these Praetorian Guards, man, I love them. Don't get me wrong. I love them in The Last Jedi. Like that sequence was awesome. But again, henceforth, why, these Praetorian Guards from here are more vicious, more calculating. and they obviously know how to actually work as a unit compared to
Yep.
the ones that we got in The Last Jedi.
I mean, I think there's also this implication that they knew that they kind of like let Paz tire himself out. Like they kind of like willingly sacrificed those Imperial troopers just so that they could like get the killing blow and know he was going to die. Is kind of what it felt like.
It just seemed like overkill, in my opinion. Like I didn't think Paz had any chance. Like he had no weapon. He had probably a knife and a small shield. And I'm like, these dudes had like Beskar armor and these vibrating, spears. And
Yeah.
it's like, and it's 3-on-1. I'm like, dude, this is not fair. But
I
it's
mean,
like
he still kind of held it down for a little bit there, though. So,
I mean, yeah, I was just like, I mean, I knew obviously the Praetorian Guards that wasn't for pods, but it was like, obviously it was probably for someone with the dark saber, but it's just like, man, it's tough to see my boy go like that though.
Yep.
It's just like, he had the like the big reinforcements thing and saving Navarro, but like, dang, he's been like Din's hero for like saved him like 2 or 3 times, but like, man, that it's just tough to see him go. I hate.
I was
to
just
see
finally
it.
getting attached to him because
Yeah.
I had a lot of skepticism about him for a decent portion of this season and all the previous episodes before, but like,
I mean, that could also give more credence to why the armor might be the spy. Is because it could
He's
show
accepting it.
yeah, he's finally coming around to it.
I'm still saying she's not, or I don't want her to be, but it kind of shows like the length that she's willing to go to protect the Mandalorian people if that's the cause. Because up until now, we've had no reason to believe that she's kind of like a double agent or whatnot.
Well, we've kind of thought about it. I mean, there was one thing that I think we overlooked with that, and we'll get back to Paz in a second, but it's like, she was the one that was telling everybody it's not a livable place. It's toxic. It's poisonous. And Bo-Katan was like, no, it's not. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, snap.
And so she's the one that's been, don't go there.
Oh.
Don't visit. Don't ever go there. And
so almost like she was enabling the Empire to be there. Oh, no,
yeah.
dude.
My thoughts is maybe she's not like the villain. Maybe she's not truly like working with like the Empire or anything, but
she's like antagonistic.
Maybe she's in a way trying to get rid of like the Night Owls and all of them, like Bo-Katan and all her people. Because of course, there's the two creeds basically, where Bo and all her people, they're not afraid to take their helmets off and stuff. Or like the Armorer and Paz and Din and all them guys, they're all like, oh no, we do not take off our helmets. Like this is the creed, we live by it.
Mm-hmm.
So the only thing I can think of is this is the way. Exactly. The whole, basically, literally the whole reference to the show. This is the way. But I could see her again, not being the villain, but trying to just get rid of that portion of the Mandalorians.
Yeah, because she wants to be that leader, right? Like maybe she sees Bo-Katan as that threat of like, maybe I need to get rid of her to redo, because like basically her whole cult or covert is foundlings.
Yep.
But
so
that's
it's like
also,
she can just redo it,
But still, I mean, to that point, stuff like that then seems weird to me. Like think about it. Like she made this is such a small thing, but she made the rondelle or whatever it's called, right? Like the little shield thing for Grogu. So there are kind of like little things like that really make me think that there's more going on here. Like I don't know who else could be the spy, or a spy, but there's a lot. I don't know. That just seems like.
Let me put a little devil's advocate there, right?
Gosh, dang it,
what if there's a tracking device or something in that little piece of armor? We don't know.
Huh. Okay.
Or what if there's something that might hamper or like incapacitate Grogu? We don't know. So there's some electronics in there. We saw it. She was working on it. But I don't know. We'll see. I have there, and this is another thing too. This could be a big red herring, right? Like,
Yeah,
she
and that's
could
what
be
I
like,
think. That's what I think. I think
and
there's
she
like,
could be like, man, it's obvious the armor is sus, because it's like when you take up, you're flying up, and all of a sudden it just goes quiet, and you just press that
Mhm.
like communicator button, and you're like, something's weird. Like, you are doing something fishy. It could be a big red herring. Like,
Yeah.
we could have. What if she's like been good and she's been sussing on someone else, on like Axe Woves, who's like whatever, and she's like, all right, I'm gonna go check on the ship, see what's going on, because I just don't,
Oh,
it's like, because we're still waiting on, obviously coming out of the clouds, we don't know what's on the other side of that yet.
yeah.
So it's like there
I
could
mean,
be,
because there's
you
also
know,
just the potential that these night owls are the bad guys. I mean,
yeah,
so there's still a lot going on here. Like, because what if one of them got injured or feigned injury on purpose to get out of there?
Yeah, I'm almost thinking that like the three people that they found and all the other people,
Hmm.
if if them guys actually truly end up being the spies, maybe they're just stormtroopers or something that they dumped off there, and they're like, hey, go find, just survive, do what you got to do, just
Yep.
survive.
they
Gosh.
just seem too willing. Like, that was like, they seemed too willing, and they were like really buttered up to Bo-Katan, which was
Yeah.
odd to me, because it was like no one liked Bo-Katan. Obviously, like, they
Mhm.
blamed her for pretty much everything.
Hmm.
Um, and then they knew exactly where to go, which was really odd to me. Like, you knew exactly where to point, like where to
Yep.
go, what alley to go. Like, you knew exactly where they were, right? It
That's
was
Who they
like,
why.
were.
That's why
yeah,
I almost think there's like a 50-50 chance of either the night owls or or not Bo-Katan, or the armorer, right? Like, there is something I think the armorer is a red herring because it seems way too obvious, right? Like,
mhm.
what if she turned off her communication because she thinks, like you said, Brandon, she thinks that someone on the ship or in the fleet is the spy, and she turned off communication so they couldn't be tracked or something.
Yeah, maybe. And
Because we've already seen that she's pretty smart and tactical. Like, she managed to take
yeah,
out the gunners in Navarro,
yeah.
so it's like she has intuition for things, I think. So there's something else going on here. I don't know.
She obviously has some fighting skill, right?
Hmm.
Like, she was pretty tactical with the little hammer
Yeah.
and whatever those
And
tongs are or
tongues, yeah.
whatever. And it's like, that's not like something you just do, right? It's something that you've had training, you've been in battle before. So I don't
Yeah.
know. We'll
I,
see.
I also
But
just feel like if she is working with Moff Gideon, either A, that's a red herring, or B, it'd have to be a very new development. Because I don't think she's been around long enough for Din to have been a child.
right.
So I don't know if that really aligns with the timeline of Rebels and Clone Wars to support that she's someone we've already seen before.
Well, and this is kind of something to think about as well, right?
Mhm.
This could be someone that made it, like Boff said, I have your family or something. And, it's like, if you do this for me, I'll spare you guys, right?
Or she's related to Moff. I don't know. Like, there's something weird
It
going
might be
on.
related, but like when we found out, right? And we haven't touched on this yet. We found out Bo-Katan gave up to
Hmm.
Moff.
Yeah.
And it's like we realized, like, there was no like, oh, she was defeated or submitted. Like, she gave up.
Yeah.
And because they all thought, like, oh, she was like one of the people that went down with the ship or whatever, but she
Yep.
gave up, which is something that is like, it was horrible in Mandalore,
Yeah.
right? Like, you do not give up. And she ends up releasing the Darksaber, and then we find out like, Moff didn't make good on his word and just bombed the mess out of Mandalore, right?
Mhm.
And it's just like there's some, I don't know, there's a lot of animosity for Bo-Katan. We're starting to realize like people, when they were on that little ship thing or whatever,
Mhm.
it's like people are like, "What? You gave up?"
So I think that is what I like about this season is it feels like Bo-Katan is kind of paying for her like crimes and sins against the Mandalorian people, so to speak. I don't know. Not that she's done anything objectively bad, but it feels like she's kind of having to pay the toll for her actions over these past series.
Yeah.
See that? Yeah, man. I just again another episode where I'm left with so many questions.
Mhm.
Like, what's gonna happen? Who are the spies? Now that there's another new question I gotta ask myself. Like, there's so many just different questions I have to ask each and every single week of this show.
Yeah, I think that she's not the spy and that her turning off the communication was very intentional. Like she's trying to prevent someone on her ship from communicating something with someone else,
Mhm.
or she's trying to prevent something vice versa, like knowing their approach. So
Yeah, the one thing you can always count on though is Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau know what they're doing,
yeah,
and so they always know simple is better.
yes,
And so like having convoluted like stories is I don't think it's very known. Now it might reference stuff that has happened before, but I think it's like they're very simple. Like I think
yeah,
simple is the way to go. It's like
this is what.
having convoluted plot hole stories is like really hard, but like I think overall it's going to be, we might get like who the armor is the start of the episode or something, but like, and then we find out like why she does her, like what's her intentions,
Yeah,
because I think that's like the last, for the past like 5 episodes we're like, what are her intentions, because it seems very sus, like,
yeah.
and so maybe we find out. So
Maybe like we even get like a background about her next episode. Heck, maybe even next season. Maybe we'll even get maybe like
Yeah.
a full episode actually like devoted just to her. Like maybe show her as
Well,
a foundling and making her way slowly up in the Mandalorian clan and stuff.
I mean, I would just love, like, I think that if we do that, maybe they'll circle back around to her working on something, like, in the Forge, and it kind of does that flashback
Yeah, maybe she has her own
sequence.
flashback.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
But,
Oh,
yeah.
another thing, I guess I don't know if either one of you noticed, but so after the whole fight is over and after they take Din away, he actually loses a piece of his armor. He actually loses his shoulder that has the mud horn on it. It's just sitting there like in the middle of the
Oh,
floor.
that is interesting. Oh,
So
man.
I'm almost wondering if like
Din?
maybe before they like leave, maybe Grogu like kind of looks out and sees that there, and maybe like he has like a little bit of a moment. Because man, I was waiting when they had Din there, like all the troopers had him all tangled up there. Man, I was waiting for Grogu to just use the Force and just push that door
Well,
open and go out and save him.
so that also brings up a very messed up possibility. Is it possible that Din is the spy?
No,
I know I hate to say that, but
I don't.
I don't.
The way they've handled him, no. Yeah, why?
It's very interesting that they took Din away. So either A, they're trying to pawn him off, like something else is going on because they didn't unmask him. I feel like unmasking him there would have been like very cold and calculated of Moff Gideon.
maybe he's force sensitive.
Oh yeah, that always when in doubt,
You don't
force
never know who's
sensitivity.
force sensitive these days.
It's true. I mean, that is true. I mean, there was a small boy in the Last Jedi who is force sensitive. Used the force to grab his broom.
Well, and I mean, Moff Gideon also said that each culture has something to offer. So Jedi's, Mandalorians, Sith, like all these cultures. So he might be making like a bargain or a deal with Mando, kind of like what he did with Bo-Katan, right? Is serve me and we don't kill Grogu, or serve me and we let your people go. I don't know. I'm very interested to see why Din in particular was taken away and not like Bo-Katan or anyone else.
Probably
Yeah.
because Din is the only one who's beaten Moff Gideon.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So
Maybe
now it's
he's
like personal.
Hmm.
yeah.
I could
And
see.
that's where it's like I always think, in season 1 it was like, I didn't get you, and then you got away. Season 2, it was, the whole getting defeated with the spear, and it was just, I don't know, maybe it's hard for me to say that because his sole intention is for the Empire, and for his own like power. I don't know. It's hard because it's like his selfish intention of beating this one Lone Ranger Mandalorian just seems
Yeah.
weird to me.
I
I
mean,
don't know. Yeah.
but at the same time, Moff Gideon is someone who comes off as very spiteful, like, very spiteful and cruel. So I think there is that element of personal stake there. Like he is willing to, I don't know, there's something else there.
Well, and I don't know if he actually knows that Bo-Katan has the dark saber,
Hmm.
and until that time, maybe he didn't know. Like, I don't know. It just seems I get what you're saying, because like there was other targets. Why did, and there was no other way to like really know. I don't know. We'll figure it out. I'm assuming. Um, it's just hard. I don't know. So
I mean, that's a pretty good theory, though. I mean, if Gideon doesn't even know that Din doesn't even have the dark saber anymore, that essentially, he basically surrendered it to Bo in the last few episodes. So I
yeah.
mean, that could be a way of him, because obviously, he's in full Mandalorian armor. Obviously, though, we know he's not a Mandalorian at all. But if he had the dark saber, obviously, at least the Death Watch portion of the Mandalorians would end up following him. And
Hmm.
I feel like almost maybe to a degree, this is a way of him kind of recruiting the Mandalorians. Because now, to get into my theory now, is I feel like next season, depending on how they handle Thrawn in the Ahsoka show,
Mm-hmm.
maybe part of that season is not going to be just about the Mandalorians. We're going to get maybe Moff Gideon eventually facing off against Thrawn to become this big grand,
Oh,
being the next Grand Admiral or being it's dumb to say, but the Emperor to a degree, like being in charge of the Empire and having
I mean,
all these big resources. He's got the Imperial command troopers now.
mhm.
They're all covered in Beskar. He'll have Mandalorians beside him, obviously, to take on whatever Thrawn is doing out there, which we still have no idea what he is doing at this point. So,
I mean, that might be why Moff Gideon has taken such an interest in Mandalore and the Mandalorians, right? Is he explicitly mentions that everyone has something to offer and that he's willing to like combine these cultures and plans. And that might be all right. Austin, what's up?
oh boy,
You just had a brain blast. What's
I
going on?
did be a huge brain blast. So the only other thing I can think of is like me and Brad were just talking about that maybe Moff Gideon doesn't know that Din doesn't have the dark saber anymore.
No, he knows that Bo has it. Like,
I
yeah, because he said to Bo to give it back.
was gonna say maybe this is the only other thing I can think of is maybe now eventually they're gonna bargain.
Yeah, plea deal.
The brain blast I just had was like, if he thought that Din had the Darksaber, maybe like to spare Grogu's life or something, that Din and all the Mandalorians would have to like team up with him, or maybe that's even the other thing. Maybe he's not trying to be super evil and sinister. Obviously, I would assume he's going to, though, because they're going to make their way up to where the Mandalorians are. But if maybe eventually they'd make like a deal, like oh, you help me defeat Grand Admiral Thrawn, I will give you guys Mandalore, kind of a thing. I mean,
yeah.
Well, and to kind of force Grogu's hand, it's like, I will kill your dad, pretty much.
Oh, kind of like the opposite of what we had. And if you don't
cooperate, because Grogu has not cooperated. Even in season 2, it was hard for him to get cooperation from him.
Yeah.
So, and then you kind of take both at it. Maybe that was the whole plan. Is like, I'll give you Grogu if you do not kill anyone else, and just take off.
Yep.
So maybe that Grogu and the Darksaber, and we'll jet. You can have Bo-Katan, but like, leave my other people alone. And so
he could also want to make Din like his, I don't know, like a captain or something for like any Mandalorian forces I don't know. I'm really intrigued about how they're going to close off this season.
Yeah.
So I am wondering if Gideon does still have interest in having Grogu, because obviously that was the huge thing in the first 2 seasons was getting Grogu, getting his blood for whatever they were doing, which again, I'm obviously assuming with the cloning stuff and obviously with Grogu being force sensitive and all that, obviously I would assume eventually it's going to lead into the resurrection of Palpatine kind of a thing.
And part of it is that he already it's already clear he's like actively lying to the Shadow Council. Like when they ask about Dr. Pershing and they ask about his quote unquote cloning research, it's clear he's lying to them. So and he wants the Darksaber. So I think it's clear that he's trying to follow in Darth Maul's footsteps and like take over Mandalore or the Mandalorian people. But like there's just a lot going on here.
Yeah, I would agree, because he is like, his cloning research is gone, and I'm like, obviously that's a lie, and that they actually said like, oh, he got captured by the Republic or the New Republic and got they didn't say, he didn't say exactly. I don't think he said exactly right, but but Hux was like, yeah, I don't believe you. I've heard otherwise.
Well, there's something else interesting, right, about the fact that he mentioned everyone's got something to offer, and like to his plan, and he mentioned Jedi, and that's really interesting to me because yes, Grogu got captured, but we never saw the products of that. Like we have seen clones, yes, but I feel like there's also another layer to what he's planning that we haven't seen yet, because the fact that he mentioned Jedi is really weird considering that there's no payoff or like anything we've seen.
Yeah.
Well, and Brandon, I'm assuming you're probably more familiar with the Thrawn trilogy than I am, because I'm not very far into it, but so.
Yeah, so.
Because I think it's one of them books that they do make a clone of Luke.
Oh,
I think you're right.
Yeah, because they have Luke's severed hand, so they like do a cloning thing with him, and they literally with that hand they make a whole new Luke Skywalker essentially.
Dadgum.
So I mean, is that what their plan is too? Because like Luke is the last Jedi that they know of at this time. So like, again, because I don't know. Maybe they're making an Heir to the Empire trilogy thing, and they're just trying to get the other books into the show, and then we're gonna get the big culmination, the huge battle in the final one or whatever in the Filoni movie.
Yeah,
because they have said that remember in Pershing's episode in the Convert, he's like, we could take the best from each DNA and splice it together. So maybe that's something that they continue with. And so that's a pretty good, theory right there. So
I mean, especially considering that all the clones were based on Mandalorian DNA, right? So there's, I mean, you got Mandalorian, you got some Jedi, some Sith in there. I
right,
mean,
because it maybe obviously with the dark saber, right there, that was the first Mandalorian, and I think one of the last Mandalorian Jedi, and
mhm.
he made it himself with Beskar, and so it's like
So freaking dope.
maybe Din is a descendant from that one Jedi. We don't know. So
Huh.
maybe maybe we're going to go back and have a Mandalorian Jedi, which I'm down for. So
Man.
Yeah. I still want to see Grogu carry that mantle, man, because, I mean,
Yeah.
he's of Yoda species, and, I mean, all we know of is Grogu, Yoda, and Yaddle. Them are the only three of whatever this species is. And, I mean, obviously, all three of them are pretty powerful with the Force. So, I mean,
Yes.
that's why I feel like Grogu could be, like, the best or the most powerful Mandalorian Jedi, because, I mean, he's learning all these hand-to-hand combat fighting things. Obviously, now he's got IG-12 to run around in. Maybe eventually they, like, reforge him and make him into, like, a big suit of Beskar or something, maybe. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
all Grogu needs is the dark saber, and I'll be happy.
I was literally just thinking of making that joke. Is that Grogu's going to fight Moff Gideon for the dark saber or something like that?
I mean, don't get me wrong, man. I don't know how I'd feel about seeing him with a big lightsaber and him jumping around doing all these flips and stuff like that. And I don't know. I love Yoda. Like, Yoda is my favorite character in, like, all of Star Wars. One of my favorite movie characters of all time. I hate watching him duel with a lightsaber in the prequels.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
It's not like cringe, but
it's not ideal.
I would, with Yoda, he's just better just being the most powerful Force user of the light side. And I would have liked for them to continue that, because, don't get me wrong, as a kid, it's epic when you see him just drop that cane and just he whips out that lightsaber, and you're like, holy hell, we're about to finally see this. And then he starts doing his flips and everything, and it's like, oh, it's kind of messy. I don't know if I like this. Obviously, as a kid, I was like, oh, this is awesome. This is the best lightsaber duel ever.
That's just funny.
And then, of course, Obi-Wan and Anakin comes around, and that is just perfection.
Yes.
All right. So, guys, I guess any closing thoughts, considering that this episode is the culmination of everything we've had this season?
Is it Wednesday yet?
Seriously.
I'm ready for it. I guess I'll go first if that's all right.
Yeah, go ahead.
So one, I'll say this episode gets about a 9 out of 10 for me.
Oh, wow.
And just because, like Austin said, it had a perfect amount of, like, there's action, comedy, drama. We still are getting set up. We're getting set up for, like, the most tense part of this whole episode. It's one of the better seasons, in my opinion.
Really?
Because it's not like, oh, we know what's going to happen. We have no clue what's going to happen. Like, it's like second season, it's like, oh, they're going to go save Grogu.
Yeah.
They're setting it up for that. And then, but we didn't know how that was going to happen. And then episode 1 was like, oh, they're stuck. We don't know how they're going to get out.
Well, also,
they need to escape, right?
We're going to have to save Grogu. Like,
right. Oh, we have to save Grogu. Right. And then now it's like Grogu's, for all we know right now, is safe, but we don't know about Din.
Yep.
And so it's like, this is that contrast. It's like, whoa, I don't know what's going to happen now. And so it's like, the mystery is there, and I love it. And it's like, because we're obviously obviously like chomping at the bit for that last episode.
Yeah.
So 9 out of 10, and then I think the kind of and my thoughts is I think someone important is gonna die, and so we've
Pa's already died, man.
Someone more
you know,
important.
we did
Whoa.
get a tweet. I just want to read this tweet real quick from Brandon Wayne, who I think is the stunt double for Pedro Pascal.
Yep.
I think he said the season 3 finale, the next episode is gonna make you wish you hadn't asked for more. It might just hurt too much. So we don't know. Someone's gonna die, and it's gonna hurt a lot, and it's gonna suck because it's obviously we don't get Ahsoka until August, so we have to live with that for about 4 months. So, but we'll see. My personal opinion, it's Bo-Katan, because I think she's ran her course, and I think this whole season has been setting up for her as being, like maybe this is her redemption, because like throughout throughout Clone Wars and Rebels, it's just like she's failed everywhere, right?
kind
and
of
so
die
maybe
a hero mentality. Like,
yeah, so maybe that's where we see this going. So I'm personally not a big fan. I'm scared because I love Katie Sackhoff as Bo-Katan. She's probably, she's one of the top 5 as far as Star Wars characters.
yeah,
I think she's, to see the character progression in like 2 series or 3 series
right.
is pretty intense. So yeah, that's my closing thoughts.
I'm just gonna say 9.5 out of 10.
Wow.
We'll leave it at that. This episode, to your point, Brandon, I think this episode has been my favorite. One of the the 7th episode of each season. I think this is my favorite out of the 3 seasons, because it truly is unpredictable. Like you said, Brandon, we've never been in a situation where, I mean, this is like possibly the bleakest situation we found ourselves in. There's literally an Imperial presence inside of Mandalore, not just on it, but inside. We don't know who is actively betraying the rest of the Mandalorians. Din's held captive. Paz was probably the strongest combatant that they had. I mean, yeah, 9.5 out of 10. I will hold true to that because this is the most unpredictable episode, I think, out of all 3 seasons.
Score wise, I'm right next to Andy. Honestly, 9.5 out of 10. Like, it takes a lot for me to go up that high for a rating.
Right.
But as I said earlier, this, and like Brandon said too, this just has a perfect blend of everything I love in Star Wars: the action, the drama, the comedy, character interactions. All that was just perfect. Obviously, the revelation of more troopers, because I'm a sucker for troopers, man. I love the clones. I love the stormtroopers for what they are to a degree. Death troopers, what the heck are they called now? From Fallen Order, I can't think of Purge troopers.
Mm-hmm.
Purge troopers are cool. I mean, I love troopers, so that made me happy getting to see those guys.
Yeah.
The only reason I don't give it a perfect 10 is because of just, again, the mystery. Like, maybe what I see for next episode might help me, because of course I'm doing what everybody else is doing. We're all just theorizing who is the spies.
I'm willing to give this episode a 10 out of 10 on rewatch. Like, once I see that everything is like, I need to see kind of like the rest of this season, right? I need to see where it's going. And then I think I can accurately rate it, because it's one of those things. Are any of these red herrings? Are they used well if they're red herrings? And how are we going to see everything pay off? Is it going to be satisfactory? Did they foreshadow? And I don't know. I don't know. This season has progressively gotten better. I think kind of a weak, slow start, but I think this has done a lot in terms of I don't know.
I thought start wise it started off good with the first 2 episodes, but then is just
yeah, that's actually fair.
It's weird to word this because like I look at this season almost like a sandwich.
Yeah.
Like the first 2 episodes were great. Depending on how this last episode goes, these last 2 episodes will be great. And normally, obviously, you eat a sandwich. The middle part's supposed to be the best.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
This time around, I don't really know how to feel about it because, yeah, there's some weak moments. There's not a lot of – you do have a lot of great moments, but they're just not, like, up there like they were with last season, even, honestly, first season, because I love that first season so much. I'll still say it. To me, it's the best season because of how self-contained it was at that point.
Yeah. I think that, honestly, this series would be stronger if this were the 4th season and we had, like, another season that's, like, if season 2 were more self-contained, like season 1 was, and then season 3 was, like, Jedi-related, like we got with season 2, and then season 4 were this season, I think it'd be, like, a stronger series. But because they kind of, like, jumped right into it with season 2, like, connecting it to the grander Star Wars canon.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think, too, one thing that would have made this season a lot better is, like, you could have started this season with episode 5 of the Book of Boba Fett, had that be the premiere of this season. Mm-hmm. Do another 3 episodes with Din doing whatever, whether he's just going around trying to find all these other Mandalorians or something. And then give us the 6th episode of the Book of Boba Fett with the whole story with Luke and Grogu. Have the last half of the season until the finale be like a Grogu story, and then have them ultimately meet up for whatever that would have been. Yeah. I agree with you though, Andy. If this was the 4th season, I would be a little more invested with how much slower it is trying to kind of build things up, but I don't know. I need to know what happens. I'm excited, and thanks to Brandon, I'm now scared for next week's episode, or this week's episode, I guess it would be. Because I will not lie, dude. If Din or Grogu die in this show, especially if it's already like this upcoming week in like 3 days, one, I will cry like harder than I probably cried when Luke showed up and killed all them troopers. I will cry harder than I did when The Force Awakens ended, because I'll still say it, man. I love Force Awakens. It's a phenomenal film to me personally.
Same. Yeah. 100%. And I think right now, like, I'm in the camp of, like, I think the Armorer and Bo-Katan are just as likely. Like, one or both of them will die. Then I think Din is next on the list of possibilities. And then I think Grogu is, like, last on the list. That's how I would, like, rank it if I had to state who I think might die this next episode.
I think Grogu's least likely just because
he's the
toys. Money. He's the money maker for Disney.
I hate to say the same thing with Din.
Well, and that's what I'll say. They're two, like, the pair is a money maker pair, right? It's just like Bo-Katan. I feel like she's ran her course, and I think this is where her culmination of, like, die for Mandalore is, like, where she was. With her with Duchess Satine, where she gave her life to against, or she was killed by Maul. It's like this is kind of maybe this is her, like, coming back and being redeemed, which is kind of interesting because that's how she came and died in the living waters. So she's maybe this is her redemption.
Oh yeah.
And so, but I want to throw this in here. Maybe Cal Kestis comes in here because every season we've had a savior, quote unquote, right?
Oh yeah.
And so maybe Cal comes. That would be set up for the new game. And maybe I would. I don't
Boba.
know. It's hard
We
for
haven't-
me because I'm like, I don't know. So, but like, I would say maybe Hera. Maybe Hera. Like they wanted to introduce Hera as like because we're getting her soon. So
and that's what we were theorizing as well, Austin, at the start, was that Boba might provide some like, well, I mean, Boba and Navarro might provide some like backing fire or something. I don't know.
Because I could see Grogu, maybe Bo, like going to Tatooine, being like going up to Boba and being like, "Hey, you know, Moff Gideon," or just say, you know, the Empire has captured Din. You know, will you help us? Kind of a thing.
Well, I also think there's a possibility. It's kind of like I kind of like we're saying, like each season, Din gets and utilizes like a new weapon. You know, like last season was the Beskar spear. The season before that was like the whistling birds. I'm wondering if this season is going to end with him finally mastering how to use the Darksaber. Whether he keeps it, I don't know. But we might have like a reversal of what we saw with Bo-Katan saving Din, right? Is where he uses the Darksaber finally. He might not keep it, but I think we might finally see that payoff of him using the Darksaber with ease.
It's a possibility.
Well, that's my closing thought personally.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that could happen. I mean, again, you know, Boba Fett could come and help save them. Maybe Grogu like comes in and basically just gives himself up to save his dad. But then at the same time, though, we'd end up having a whole nother season of, you know, Din going to rescue Grogu, even though Grogu has definitely, you know, progressed a lot since we first saw him in the first season. You know, we've seen him become more of a warrior, become stronger with the Force and all that. So, I mean, maybe even he faces Moff Gideon. Maybe I don't want to go as dark because he's a baby and he's adorable, but maybe he even kills Moff Gideon to save Mando, kind of a thing. Maybe kind of tease us to getting dark side Grogu, maybe. His big old eyes turn yellow. I could see that happening. I don't want to, but I could see it. But
that's awesome.
Yeah. Those are pretty much my closing thoughts too, man. I want to know what happens. I don't want to wait 3 more days to find out, but we unfortunately are going to have to. So
yes, sir.
So I think that pretty much does it here for this episode.
So
yeah. So I guess we'll start off with Andy. Do you have anything coming up on the channel this week?
Yes, I've got a Mandalorian episode. I've got a Mandalorian episode ranking coming up, as well as some more movie and comic recommendations on my channel. So stay tuned and stay posted.
Interesting. I am definitely going to watch that video because I feel like I know what your number 1 is.
We'll see.
And Brandon, what do you got coming out for your channel this week for content?
Just daily shorts, and then I might have some theories on the Darksaber.
Okay.
Oh wow.
I am interested in that. And if you guys haven't been watching my channel, this week it's gonna be Evil Dead week for me. Tonight, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, I will be doing a live watch along for the first Evil Dead movie. And then tomorrow will be Evil Dead 2, so on and so forth, until we get to Friday with Evil Dead Rise.
Mm-hmm.
And then the following week, I will be doing a ranking / live discussion with AJ Reacts To, who I will be doing this review series with this upcoming week. Obviously, we have episode 8 of the Talkalorian live next Saturday with hopeful guest, if he's still on for us. Sean Chandler should hopefully be our guest.
Mm-hmm.
And the following week after that, we have got our big finale of the Talkalorian Live, talking about the whole season. And I also did a poll on my channel. I wanted your guys' opinions as to what Star Wars video you guys wanted me to do. So sometime this week or next week, I will be giving you guys my favorite moments from each of the films, all of the live action films. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that video.
Very nice, Austin. Very nice.
That's dope.
Yeah, I'm going to be a busy guy here this whole upcoming week. So some sleep and a little time off will be nice after that.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So, all right, guys. Again, as I've got here in the comments, make sure you guys go check out Brandon's channel. He is new to YouTube. Let's get some subscribers towards him. Again, he's going to have some daily shorts, so go check that stuff out. I've been watching quite a few. I'm excited for this Darksaber video now.
Yes.
Yes.
And obviously, guys, King's Comics. I mean, obviously, go check him out. Always got stuff going over on his channel now that he's kind of getting back into the swing of things here, too, with YouTube.
Yes, sir.
So very exciting stuff for all three channels coming up this week. So I suppose you guys, I will see you guys later, but we will see you next week for this hopefully not heartbreaking finale episode.
It's going to hurt, but I hope it hurts good.
I don't want hurt at all. So, all right, guys. With that being said, make sure you guys hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. And we'll see you in the next one.